This is In the Word. Glad you are listening today and on this important topic of lust. What everyone loves to talk about in public, of course. This isn't quite public though, so maybe this is more appropriate. I don't know. You know, lust is one of those things, and of course lust leads to immorality in a number of different ways that I have personally seen wreck people's lives. Or at least damage them. Nothing is outside of God's grace and the cross. Jesus is, He is there for you, and our God is merciful. So there's nothing beyond that. But I have seen it through counseling people cause massive damage. Before I even get to Matthew 5 here, go back, think about the Beatitudes for a second. They're the beginning of chapter 5 in the Sermon on the Mount. Beatitudes. So those Beatitudes, they were all a picture. This is what a person looks like. That doesn't spell really well there, apparently. This is what a person looks like who is faithfully following Jesus. It's like sold out, faithful follower. We'll just call it that. Sold out to Jesus. They mourn their sin is one of the things that the Beatitudes. They're merciful because they've received so much mercy. They're poor in spirit because they know they're desperate in need of God's grace shown to them through the cross. Now that said, if you try and walk faithfully with the Lord, and yet you harbor this secret lust in your heart, it's going to mess you up. I've just seen, frankly, too many stories in people's lives and talked to too many people where it just causes damage. It is a secret bomb in your heart. So that said, let me go to the text here. Verse 27, Matthew 5. Again, this is Jesus is going through these different contrasts, I guess I'll call it that. Whereas the Pharisees, the religious leaders, are looking at the letter of the law. He's saying, hey, it's so much more than just the letter of the law. It's what's going on inside of you, not just on the outside. So Jesus says, you have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. You shall not commit adultery, which is true. You should not. It is the seventh commandment of the 10 Commandments. Can't draw them. Given Exodus 20, Deuteronomy chapter 5, you shall not commit adultery. Of course, we know that. Yet, of course, it's it's funny because in Jesus' time, years after Moses gave this commandment, it was still taken very seriously. Think about John chapter 8, the woman who was caught in adultery. Remember, they're about to stone her. So it's something that was taken very seriously in biblical days. Frankly, not so much today. It's one of those things, even when you hear about news stories, political figures, sports people, they have these affairs, and it's almost like no one even thinks anything of it, sadly, anymore. But think of all the damage that causes to obviously marriages and families, kids. I mean, it's just a mess. I haven't had to deal with that counseling too much, but I know what happens. And not only that, it messes with you. It's not writing well today. It messes with you. And that is true not just adultery in the act, but what is beneath this, which is lust. Jesus says, so the Pharisees are thinking, hey, I just make sure I don't commit adultery. Who cares what happens beneath on the inside. Who cares if the action didn't happen? Then I'm good. Well, Jesus says that's not the case. What's going on in your heart matters just as much, because Jesus says, no, it's not just a letter of the law here about adultery, but I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. I mean, literally, that would be the case, I'm pretty sure. So, as is the case with many things here, I've heard it said once, the heart of the matter is the heart of the matter, right? The heart of the matter is literally the heart of the matter. Because here's reality. Where does sin start? It's a horrible looking heart. Sin starts in the heart. Our wickedness starts in the heart. It's not something that we just do without even thinking about. No, it's determined first in our heart, and then it goes from there, to, let's see if I want to draw this, to our eyes. So now I don't know what I just did. So now goes from our heart to our eyes, and then to our, I don't think I can draw a hand very well, but we'll try here. To our hands. I'm clearly a pastor and not an artist. But our hands cause the problem in a physical sense, whatever that might be. But it all, of course, as always, it starts in the heart. So Jesus says, but if I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Before it ever even gets there, it went from here to here to here. So he says, verse 29, he gives a couple extreme measures, but pretty serious about them. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. For it is better to lose one of your members than it is your whole body to be thrown in hell. Again, not that there isn't grace, in the cross through someone having an issue, a struggle like this, a very real struggle, but rejection of God over and over tells us that there's a good chance that you're not walking with the Lord. If that's confusing to you, you got to go to some other verses. 1 John is where you want to go looking for that. But if you consistently, habitually do not care what God says and you continue to sin, that tells you your heart probably is not saved. And so that's what Jesus is getting at here. So he's saying it's better for you to lose your eye, right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. In the same hand, if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. Okay, so you have the connection here, and throw it away. Okay, for it's better to lose one part of your body than the whole thing. There is a seriousness that Jesus is making. Now, before you actually start cutting away here, bring it to the light. Bring your sin, bring your struggle to the light. It's interesting to me, as when I was a young pastor, frankly, this conversation of lust came up all the time. I couldn't tell you how many times I've counseled so many people on this subject matter, young guys, and yet now that I'm less young, it doesn't come up as much. I don't think the problem's gone away. It's just as people get older, they tend to maybe be more embarrassed. They don't want to talk about it. But Jesus is saying this is serious stuff here. So much so that I would say tear out your eye and cut off your hand. Okay, so again, before you do common sense things here. Common sense would say if the trigger of your lust is some woman who you go out to lunch with, well, stop doing that. Kind of take a common sense approach. If there's this person who is bringing lustful thoughts into your mind, well, then I would maybe not hang out with that person. or if it is a pornographic sense, and whether it's Netflix is your problem, well, get rid of Netflix. Or if it's internet, get rid of the internet for you. It's okay. People survived for thousands of years prior to internet. You can do it too. So you got to have common sense on resolving this. You bring it to the Lord. You bring it. He will show you grace. You bring it to someone else. You bring it to a friend you can trust. I don't remember who said it first, that I heard that a bored man is a dangerous man. A bored man is a dangerous man because they do dumb things. So whatever your triggers are, you want to get rid of those such things. Jesus' point in this is ultimately your problem is not that you are, how do I say it? You want to engage in intimate actions. That's not the problem. Problem is who you're doing that with, if you're married, and that your issue when it's outside of marriage is not a, it's not a physical thing. It is 100% a heart issue that you need to deal with. Pushing all kinds of buttons today. This topic has got me pushing all buttons. There is seriousness to this. I encourage you to talk to someone if this is reality. They can't fix it for you. Only Jesus can fix this. Hearts are only fixed through receiving grace, but it's something Jesus offers, and it helps for someone to bring into the light, and someone to walk with you in it. So once again, and this is the second of I think it's 6 or 7 of these contrasts where the Pharisees thought, hey, this is all about, it's only about my actions. And Jesus saying, no, it's nothing to do with actions. I mean, actions are important for sure, but it all starts in the heart.